everybody. Welcome to episode number 110 of the Debt Free Dad podcast. So I get this question a lot. Brad, how is the Debt Free Dad and Roots and really what you guys are doing, how is that different than, say, someone like Dave Ramsey? Aren't you guys kind of doing the same thing? You guys are killing me with this question, and we're going to cover it, though, on today's show. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Debt Free Dad podcast, where we're helping normal, everyday people learn how to save money and kick debt so they can live a happier and stress-free life. Now here's your host, Debt Free Dad, Brad Nelson.
Hey, how's everyone doing today? You can find me on Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram. Just search Brad Nelson, Debt Free Dad. And welcome to today's show. So glad that you guys are joining us. And remember to get all the resources, show notes, and links from today's show. You can head over to balancedcents.com/110. That's BALANCEDCENTS.com/110. So today we're talking about Dave Ramsey. And admittedly, we've been discussing on, do we bring this subject up? Do we talk about it on the show? And I'll be transparent. I've kind of avoided it. And the reason why I've avoided the question is because I would hope what we're doing here just ultimately just on its own differentiates us between us, Dave Ramsey, or any of these other, financial, personal finance gurus, Susie Orman, David Bach, and, all these other things that are out there. At the end of the day, Debt Free Dad and what we're kind of all about, we're going to talk about this today, is just that, we want to just let normal people know that normal people can win with their finances, and we are normal people. And I think what my goal was is to hopefully just differentiate ourselves just with our content and the messaging that we're putting out there. And I think for a lot of you, though, you're getting that because we do hear that quite a bit, is that you guys seem like you're pretty normal people, and that's pretty inspiring, and it gives me hope that that I could do this too. But at the same time, I still think, you talk about some of these big personalities, the biggest one in my opinion, and you guys can share your opinions, but in my opinion here in the United States is obviously the bigger one. There's, Dave Ramsey. You got Susie Orman. You've got people like David Bach, and Ramit Sethi is a bigger one, kind of climbing now. And I mean, you've got all of these, bigger personal finance personalities out there. And, we'll get these questions, especially, when we're getting ready to open up Roots Personal Finance, or someone's, thinking about joining Roots Personal Finance. I'll get this question a lot. Brad, I was a part of, a Dave Ramsey program, or I've read Dave's book, and, I couldn't really follow it. I had a hard time sticking to the plan. How is Roots any different than, say, that thing? That's where the question typically comes up a lot, is when someone's really thinking about making an investment into, the programs and things that we offer. And the one thing I always will respond to them with is look, at some point, no matter if it's Dave's program, or if it's Susie's program, or if it's Bob's program, or if it's our program, the Debt Free Dad and the Roots program, at the end of the day, you got to work the program. A lot of people say, well, that didn't work for me. And in some cases, it's like, well, yeah, not everything's going to work for you. You are going to have to adjust. You're going to have to adjust your patterns of behavior, your habits, to actually get some of those programs to work for you. Now, there is a little bit of a caveat to this, and I think this is the point of why I want to bring up the show and how I want to kind of roll into this, is that there is a big difference, I think, in how the information is taught, who it's taught from. And I think that plays a big role. Like when we were kids, when you're in school, and high school especially, I know for me personally, like I struggled with math. Like still today, math is not my best subject. I'm much better at it. But man, if you put me in front of some algebraic equations and stuff, I'm done. Like there ain't no way I'm going to be sitting through those conversations, right? But I can tell you, when I was in high school and I had a math teacher, it was like a completely foreign language to me. No matter how this person taught me, I couldn't understand it. But then oddly enough, I got into college. In my first year in college, I had to take, a basic mathematics class as part of, just the requirement of going through college. And this is just a local community college, nothing really fancy. And I got to tell you, I aced that class. And it was just taught different. Like, it understood, and the person who was teaching it I could relate to, and they just taught different, and they explained things differently to me. And they also came from a different background, which also allowed me to kind of buy into what it was that they were teaching. And it just felt different, and therefore I took the information different, and I was actually able to learn it and actually be able to do it. So I think that plays a big role in just about anything, not just personal finances, but really anything that you want to learn, is that, you've got to find people, teachers, coaches, leaders, people that you can relate to and connect to that are speaking your language. Because I'll admit, I mean, there's some personal finance people out there that and I'm not going to mention names because I don't like to badmouth anybody, but that just annoy the crap out of me. I mean, seriously, it's not that the information that they're teaching is bad. It's just I just can't connect with them. Like, the way they talk about it, the way they sound, the way they come off, their demeanor. I mean, we're going to talk about some of these things with Big Dave Ramsey here today, but that to me was just has been a big put off. So finding the right people that I can connect to, I think, makes a big difference. What do you guys think?
Well, for me, I mean, when it comes to this sort of stuff, you talk about the teacher kind of playing a big role. It's also kind of what's being taught as well. Sometimes, if you look at, and we're going to, one of the big things as we kind of go through this today is there are a lot of ways to achieve things in life. If I go to the store, there's not one diet book on the shelf. There's not one way to lose weight. There's not one way to do anything. And I think as you look at all these different people in the industry, I think that's what you find is a lot of them just teach their way to do it. And their way isn't wrong or right. It's just their way to do it. And we're here to say, and I guess the point of the show today is, and this comes up a lot because a lot of times I talk about the podcast. So I'm part of this podcast. It's Debt Free Dad. And I get a lot of,
Oh, you guys
so
are
like Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey, right?
Dave Ramsey. So yeah. Oh yeah. I listen to Dave Ramsey all the time, and it always goes to that. And it's frustrating because it's like, I have to explain, yes, we share some of the same principles and ideas, but we're not. We're going to talk about today why we're not exactly the same. It doesn't mean we don't share the same philosophies and principles and at the high level. It just means how to get there. We feel like there's a fork in the road and he goes that way and we kind of go a different way. Yeah. At the end of the day, you still achieve success. It's just two different ways to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think when it comes down to it, and we talk about this, Amber, I mean, shoot, you're in Roots and you're helping out with our workshops and everything. You hear me say this all the time, but the principles of personal finance are the principles. Like, people, I think, are sometimes tricked into thinking that there is some big financial secret out there that is helping people become successful with their money that they don't know about. That's BS. Right? You are wasting your time.
It's like a secret diet.
Yeah, secret, right? I got the secret blueprint, right? No, you don't, right? The information is out there. The information is out there on how to get out of debt. So, the principles, you look at, and one of the comments I have here is you look at brands of vacuum cleaners or fast food restaurants or cars or couches or chairs or any of these, right? They're all committed to fixing the same problem. Whether you get one vacuum cleaner versus the others, they are meant to pick up dirt, right? People will say, oh, you're just like Dave Ramsey. Well, you guys have no business talking about money or personal finance. Oh, really? There's only room for one person to talk about this, right? It just drives me crazy. But think about this. When it comes to the financial principles, the stuff that everyone teaches about, Dave teaches about it, we teach about it, Susie Orman teaches about it, David Bach teaches about it, Ramit Sethi talks about it. I mean, just all of these guys. Warren Buffett talks about it. They're all talking about the same stuff. Live below your means. Have a budget. Have a good financial plan for your life. Save first. Pay yourself first. Invest at least 10 to 15%, if not more, into retirement. Reduce or limit your debt. Now, depending on what person you listen to, some people are okay with debt. Other people, like Dave Ramsey and us, I'm not a huge fan of debt either, especially when it comes to high interest credit card debt and new car loans and things like that, right? But if you listen to a lot of these personalities and a lot of these teachers and coaches out there, a lot of them are right on a lot of the same pages. But again, what separates a lot of these experts are really in the details, and in my opinion, it's how they teach it, where they're coming from, and how they're getting that information to the listener or to their members to help them get the results that they want to see. And I think there's nothing that I could say that I couldn't help someone who doesn't buy into what we're all about. In fact, when you listen to if you go to one of our Life Without Payments workshops, I'll tell people, it's like, look, if you jump into this program and you're like, I don't really like Brad, like I can't relate to him. Well, then this is not the program for you, because that's an important part of having success and getting out of debt is whoever you're learning from, whether it be a book, a coach, a program, a course, whatever it may be. Like there's got to be some relation to the content in order for you to start taking action, because if it's not motivating you, you ain't going to do anything with it anyways. You're just going to waste your time. But the financial principles that we teach here are the same financial principles that the majority of other financial gurus out there are teaching. It's the differences are in the major details. The one thing that we should do though, and the one thing I do want to do is we do have to give credit though. I think personalities like Dave Ramsey, people like Susie Orman and David Bach, and even some of these really popular financial gurus that are out there. They did, I believe, pave the way to opening up the topic of debt freedom or good financial health. Susie Orman's not necessarily debt free. She's more like having, control over your finances, good, healthy financial mindsets and things like that. But I think, we do have to give these individuals credit for that, because they did open the door to having some of these conversations. Back before, Dave was really talking about, there were other people out there. In fact, Dave often talked about, I don't know if he still does because I don't really listen to Dave anymore, but Dave used to often talk about a guy by the name of Larry Burkett. And Dave learned a lot of the stuff that he now teaches from Larry Burkett. And Larry Burkett taught it before Dave Ramsey. A lot of people will say like, well, it's the Dave Ramsey envelope system. No, it's not. It's just an envelope system that's always been used. Dave just made it popular. So now all of a sudden it's become the Dave Ramsey envelope system. Dave Ramsey did not invent the envelope system. Dave Ramsey did not invent the debt snowball. Even though when someone hears debt snowball, it's Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is just a really good, and I shouldn't even say good, excellent marketer. And that has made him who he is today. But the principles that he's sharing, he didn't invent any of them. He didn't create anything. He just took the information that was out there, repackaged it, became a great marketer, and really opened up just the conversation about personal finance and getting out of debt and reducing financial stress. And so I think, we definitely have to give credit where credit is due. There's no question.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, at the heart of it, the goal is to help people, right? And in all of those people you just named, they've helped millions of people with their finances. And so that at the heart of it is what we're all about, is here to help, just like they are. They're out there helping people achieve success.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing that really sets us apart from us and some of these, again, I would say financial gurus, these really popular people, is that we're normal. And I kind of mentioned this in our intro, but we're just normal people. If we're using Dave Ramsey as the example, Dave Ramsey is ultimately it's a radio show. And if you've ever listened to Dave Ramsey's radio show, it's there's a lot of things that Dave will make very polarizing. And the reason for that is because it gets more listeners, right? Nobody wants to listen to a boring radio show and not have any real drama or anything built into it. They probably wouldn't be around too long, right? But Dave's really good at that. And so, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, but, he gets on people's cases and, he becomes that father figure, right? And he starts, maybe yelling and screaming at people for doing stupid stuff with their money, right? So that's one thing you got to keep in mind. People will, like after our workshops, we'll do Q&A. There's been times where I say, people, this is not the Dave Ramsey show, all right? I am not Dave Ramsey. So just keep that in mind. When you're asking your questions, a good coach is going to follow that up with a lot of extra questions so we understand your situation. You don't really get that too much on the Dave Ramsey show. It's a radio show. That is not really truly how financial coaching really works. It's just him answering general questions and him giving, getting his, pants on fire a little bit, and he starts to get angry at people.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I was an avid listener for a long time. And I think the one thing I've learned, especially as I achieve financial freedom and you listen to it, there's so many times he gets these people that call in get very little time for the most part to ask a question. Yeah. Sometimes they even say that like, hey, we need to take a break in about 2 minutes, but hey, Ryan, what's your question? It's like, you're not going to really answer my question in 2 minutes. And there's so many times when people ask questions and Dave cues in on something and he goes off on his rant. And I'm like, I don't think that's what they were asking.
Yeah.
But that's what sells. That's what gets people like, oh yeah, he really got that person.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't think that person was really asking what you kind of went off about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, those make good sound bites. They share those on social media, becomes viral. It's like, oh my gosh, did you hear what Dave said? Right. And it's like, not always in the best interest of the actual person that's asking the question. And admittedly, we have to be careful with this too, because in Life Without Payments, our Facebook groups and stuff where people are asking questions, like admittedly, I will ignore some questions because I know it's going to take me forever to gather all of the information to actually give them the right, at least advice if it were me in their situation. Because there's a lot of underlying issues when it comes to money and personal finance. There's a lot of things going on that you need to understand before you give someone advice. And that's not always going to be on the question on the radio show or in some of these Facebook groups. So you just got to be really, really careful. The other thing too is when we talk about we're normal people, I mean, you look at Dave Ramsey, I mean, this guy's worth several $100 million. I mean, it's ridiculous. I think at one time, I don't know if this is accurate, but I want to say he's got well over 1,000 employees now working for the Dave Ramsey Corporation, or Ramsey Solutions, I think is what they call it now. And we're nowhere near that. I mean, I think, like I said, people, I think, appreciate that we are just normal people. There's a lot of encouragement for other people to realize that, okay, if Amber, Ryan, and Brad can do this, and they're helping other normal people do this, like, why can't we do it? I know for me and for my wife, Sarah, that was one thing, I think, with Dave that we had a hard time kind of relating to, was that, like, he is this multi-millionaire, and here's little old us. Like, it was hard for me to relate that I could ever really actually get out of debt, because he was just like this bigger than life story, built this giant business. And it's like, is this really a reality? And for me, I think that's one of the goals of what we do here at Debt Free Dad, is to show people like, hey, like, you don't have to make millions and millions of dollars in order to get out of debt. And I hope that's coming through in a lot of the stuff that we talk about. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with a few extra points here in just a minute. Hey, if you love planners, this is for you. But do you know why planners frustrate me? Because they only really get it half right. Now, sure, they're really good and fancy about helping you manage your time, which is really important, obviously. That's what a planner's for. But where they get it wrong is money, the second most valuable resource in our lives. Most planners don't include any financial planning, things like, keeping track of paydays, bills, due dates, spending, yearly expenses, budgets, cash flow planning, debt elimination plans, and goal planning, right? None of that stuff. That's a real pain. And then what? Then you got to create your own in some silly binder, right? And who has time for all of that stuff? So instead, what happens? Nothing, right? A lot of people tend to ignore their finances even more, and things only get worse. Well, that all ends today, because I am so excited to announce and release my brand new, totally awesome Debt Freedom Planner. This thing's awesome, by the way. Now, before you say, Brad, I've already got a planner. This is not an ordinary day planner. This is the Debt Freedom Planner, which is a companion tool that works with your day planner, and it's built to help you manage your money, pay off more debt, and melt away financial stress. And I believe this is the tool that a lot of people who want to take control of their finances have been waiting for. So head on over to therealdebtfreedad.com, click on the Debt Freedom Planner in the menu to get access to your planner today. Hey guys, we are back talking about how we are not Dave Ramsey. And the next point I want to talk about is that it's not just about wealth. And I think that's a big thing, and you probably don't hear us really talk about that all that much on this show, is things like retirement, investing, wealth building. And there's some reasons for that. But what do you think, Ryan? Like, what is your big thing on this, and not necessarily being so focused on just the wealth? It's about building wealth, becoming wealthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, I mean, when we were, again, we kind of started off the Dave Ramsey, he kind of introduced us to this debt freedom. It was just kind of this, no holds bar, get out of debt at all costs. And it seemed to be the main reason to do that was so eventually I can have millions of dollars and I can change my family tree and we can live this $1 million lifestyle. And it's like, to this day, I mean, money's nice. I see kind of benefit in wealth building, or I see just money and wealth building and having that sort of stuff is a benefit to being out of debt, but it wasn't the driver for me. I think a lot of people, especially when you're in the middle of debt, the last thing on my mind was I'm going to have millions of dollars one day.
Right.
Because in the middle of like, I have $20 in my checking account. I just want to like get to the other side of it. I think now that I'm on the other side of it, yeah, of course we've maximized contributions to different things. And there are things we're doing now that are going to get us to a good place when we retire. And that's a benefit. But I think for us, that day-to-day living was just, it wasn't about, and it still isn't about the money that we make or the money that we're going to have when we retire. For me, it's about between now and the next 20 some years, I have 20 years of choice and 20 years of like creating the life I want to create.
Yeah.
And not being hunkered down by all these bills and responsibilities and like payments. Like that alone for me is where the true happiness and where the true, and I feel it's like, that's what we try to relate to people. That is what, to me, that's the definition to me of being truly financially free. It's not being free to go out and buy a bigger house. Because when I first started this journey, that's what I thought I wanted to get out of debt for, right? I want to get out of debt because then I can have a nicer house or a better this,
better
or a bigger
stuff,
that.
right?
And then I got out of debt and I don't want any of that because it's not really what I want. What I love is the fact that an opportunity could fall in my lap tomorrow and I can really consider taking it. Or I go to work on Monday because I want to, not because I like have to go and pay the bills and I hate this.
Right.
You know, it's just that amount of freedom and choice in your life is just, man, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, we've asked this question plenty of times inside Life Without Payments, even inside Roots, and that, if you ask people like if you had to wake up and feel a certain way or you want something with your finances, what is that thing that you would like to have? And a lot of people speak exactly to what you just spoke to. They don't talk about, I want to be filthy rich or I want to be wealthy, right? That might be in the back of their minds, but it's like you said, they're more focused on the day-to-day living. Like, I want to wake up tomorrow and not have to worry about debt and money. I want to be able to sleep at night. I want to be able to not have to worry about how we're going to cover next month's bills or, we just got out of the Christmas and holiday season. I want to be able to afford the holidays without freaking out. We hear all of those things all the time. The other thing, too, is this is something our mom taught me. Biggest life lesson is retirement's not guaranteed. My mom passed away at a very young age, 57 years old, and she worked her whole life. And luckily, she was able to work part-time a lot of the years that she was working and was able to do some of the stuff that she liked to do. But they did save a considerable amount of money for retirement. They did very well for themselves for retirement, but then she passed away at 57 years old. And it's like, well, man, I don't want to wait till I'm 57 to be able to say like what Ryan just said about having then the opportunity to make the choices that I've been always wanting to make. I want to be able to do that now and still be able to save and build wealth for the hope that I'm going to live longer than 57, right? That's the end goal. But so many people, guys, I'll share this conversation I had this last summer, with somebody, and they were saying they're not really thrilled with their job, and they're saying I've only got 15 more years until I'm done. And I just thought to myself, 15 years. You have 15 years that you could be doing so many different things with, but so many people choose just to wait to get to retirement, and then they say that's when they're really going to start living their dreams and doing the things that they want. And it's like, man, and I'm not telling you people to go out there and quit your jobs by any means, but with the freedom and flexibility that comes from having less debt and control over your finances and less financial stress, man, you could start experiencing a lot of those things now. And that, to me, and to what we're about, to what Debt Free Dad is all about, that's what it's all about. Yes, wealth can be a goal for you, but for us, it's about getting people to the point where they're able to breathe, where they're happy, where they're satisfied, where they're content, they feel secure. They have freedom of choice and being able to do different things, take different jobs, and those are all great things. And that's where we tend to put a lot of our focus. The other thing, too, is I think we respect other people's viewpoints. Admittedly, sometimes those viewpoints for me are a little hard to swallow. But, you know, I respect the fact, like, and you guys have heard me talk on the show, like, I'm not a big credit score fan. Like, I'm just not. Like, for me, ever since I got out of debt, like, it just hasn't really been all that helpful to me. I don't see the value in having a good credit score because I just don't have the need or the desire to have debt to play with, like credit cards, even if I'm paying them off every month. Like, it's just not something that I'm really terribly interested in. But for somebody else, there are plenty of people
like me,
like Amber,
and I don't get kicked off the show.
Yeah, that you know, they don't. I wouldn't say that they make it their number one goal, but for some people, their credit score is important to them. You know, and I'm totally fine with that. Like, that's it's your life. You're an adult. I am not here to be a dictator and say this is the only way that you can do it, and you have to not care about a credit score. My goal in our education and the way we talk about it is that I just don't want you to make it the main thing, because if you make it the main thing, you're missing the things that are going to help you become successful with your finances. Make the other things, the things like budgeting, living below your means, building an emergency fund, paying down debt, you know, focusing more on content and being grateful and things like that. Those are the things that are going to help you ultimately have success. But don't make the credit score the main thing. Or people who drive like new cars. Like, I'm not a big fan of new cars. I think for most people, it is one of the number one contributors of what keeps most people stuck with high car payments. You know, they're depreciating assets outside of the time that we're living in right now, but that's going to go away eventually. But seriously, if you're into new cars, fine. Like, I'm okay with that. So I think for us on this show, we understand. It's like, Ryan, when you said when we opened it up, it's like, I think we understand and appreciate that people can go about this a different way. Yes, there's this set of guidelines that we have that we think you should follow, but you don't have to follow it perfectly. And if you don't follow it exactly like I followed it or Ryan followed it or Amber followed it, like, that doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means that that's the way you're going to do it.
You know, you look at, you bought a house, you know, I think you bought a house, earlier last year.
Yeah.
And, you know, you kind of said, like, I did it without a credit score and all that sort of stuff. I think it's okay to understand that there's some people who may not be able to go through what you went through in order to get you to the point to be able to do that. Like, you didn't just like pay off all your debt and then a month later got to pay, you know, it took a long time to get you to that point so that you could do that. And that can work for people, but it also is like, depending on, there's, again, not knowing everyone's situation, not knowing everybody's, you know, would I tell someone who needs to have a home, you know, there's just so many different variables that make somebody's decision to maybe need a credit score because they need a house sooner than doing the way you did it, to say, well, you're wrong because you don't need a credit score. It's like, that's, man, I think that's where we differ from Dave. Is it's a lot of it is, if you've listened to Dave, there's just the Dave way. It's the Dave Ramsey method of paying off debt. Yeah. And that is the only thing that is really allowed. And that was just always really, for me, that was one of the big turnoffs for us, is we did things that Dave didn't agree with. And in a lot of his shows or a lot of the things, we were considered like crazy. And, you know, we're going to be, you know, he likes to use, I don't think he doesn't necessarily call people names, but he uses words to infer that you're being like a moron for going on vacation while you're paying off debt. But we would do things and like save for a vacation, pay cash for it, do all the right things. And I'm a moron. Or my kids, there were things I wasn't willing to sacrifice for our kids. Like, they were in band that ate up some good amount of money. I was a moron because I'm not willing to sacrifice my kids' band stuff, even though we paid cash for it.
Yeah.
But because I wasn't willing to just go off the deep end and go to rice and beans until it all got done. It's like, man, I just don't agree with that. And I think a lot of people at the beginning, it's easy to say rice and beans. And then the third or fourth month kick in and you're like, I can't do rice and beans all the time.
Right.
Like, there's the reality of what is rice and beans, because getting out of debt isn't like a few month thing. I mean, it's usually years of rice and beans, and I could not live that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a fine line between, you know, being super extreme, cutting things out, and okay, we're going to cut things out, but yet we're going to give ourselves, which we encourage you to do on this show, by the way, is to give yourself some rewards along the way. Take a reasonable vacation if you want to do that. Go out to eat, you know, do some of those things. Like, again, you know, tomorrow is never guaranteed, right? So it's got to be a good mix of doing it both ways. You're doing it with intensity, but you're also being somewhat reasonable about it. And I think, for us, when we talk about we respect others' viewpoints, I feel like even the followers, and I'm going to use the word cult followers because that's the way I feel some of them are. In fact, we've had a lot of people come over to the Debt Free Dad podcast. A lot of people join our Life Without Payments group. Heck, we've even had people join Roots Personal Finance because they say, like, I got kicked out of some of the Dave groups because I didn't exactly agree with everything that they were saying that you should do. I just had different opinions about it. I got the general idea of what they were trying to do. I agreed with the, building the emergency fund and paying down debt, but I just didn't agree with certain things, and they ended up removing them from the group. I've heard that multiple times from multiple people. Those groups and those cult followings and things, they can be a little bully, the little bullies about it. And even Dave, I think, can be a little bit bullish when it comes to some of the stuff that he talks about on his show and the way he, talks to some of his listeners and stuff. But again, is that really Dave, or is that just, Dave creating a good show to listen to as an entertainment value of listening to, again, people's financial challenges and wanting to get their questions answered? So there's a fine line there too. In fact, I actually, and most people probably don't know this, I actually went to Dave Ramsey financial coach training many years ago. And they actually told us in the training, they're like, remember when you're coaching people, this is not the Dave Ramsey show. They even said that when they trained us. They said, you are not doing what Dave Ramsey does on the show. That's not financial coaching. Financial coaching is gathering all the information and getting all the details and making sure you understand that. And they actually called it fly-by coaching. Don't do fly-by coaching, meaning that don't just take a question, give them an answer without knowing the full details of why they're asking the question. And that happens all the time on this show. It's crazy. Other thing is too, with Dave, a lot of people will say, what are some big differences? I think the big thing for us is we just don't really involve religion in our conversation. Dave is very religion driven, very Christian driven. I grew up in a Christian household, went to private schools, go to church, I do all the things that, Dave preaches on his show, but I just don't bring it into what we do here. And again, I think the reason for that is because I respect other people's viewpoints and how other people were raised, and not everybody was raised like I was. And that doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make me wrong. It doesn't make them right. It doesn't make me right. I think shoving down, especially something as sensitive religion can be, and adding that to this whole idea of becoming debt free, I think there's a lot of people out there who are turned off by that. And my reason for not talking about it here is because I don't want them to not get help, because the religion part turned them off. There is, you could still do this stuff and not have to talk about, religion. All right. And then last but not least is all about support and accountability. I think this for me is really what I wanted to do different than say, like, some of Dave's programs or, Susie's programs or any of these expert financial people that are out there that have these, do-it-yourself courses or do-it-yourself, self-help books and things. The number one thing missing for most of us is support and accountability. It isn't that we don't know what to do. We lack the commitment in actually doing the work, right? I mean, most people know that they should budget or have some sort of a plan for their finances. Most people know that they should probably save more money than they do. Most people know that, even just deep down inside, the guilt that they feel, they probably shouldn't go further into debt. They should probably come up with a plan to pay off some of their debt. I mean, most people understand, the general things that we're talking about. Yes, the details matter, like we talked about, but most people generally get it. It's the lack of commitment. Amber, you experienced it. You guys weren't really doing anything until you joined Roots, and then you got the support and accountability, and bam, 20 months later, you guys are like in a completely different life. It's crazy.
Yeah, and we were told by multiple people, this is how you do it. It was the same as what you told us.
Yeah.
We just didn't do it. So, and it wasn't just you, it was the people in the group. You come post a question or a concern or anything, and somebody was there to answer you any time of day, any time of night.
Right.
Didn't matter.
Yeah.
Somebody was there to help you out.
I think the key for me there is, and so we kind of did a lot of this before kind of Roots was really a thing. I thought my brother was crazy for getting out of debt, wasn't really on board with it. So it took us a lot longer because we didn't have that support and accountability. And I think the big reason for support and accountability is because in the working normal world we live in, what you're about to do is most people don't do, and everyone's going to be talking you out of it. So you've got to surround yourself with people who have the mindset and want to do that. Because I, the same way, I did a lot of self-help courses, and then I'd go over to somebody's house and be like, yeah, I'm going to buy that new car. It's like, yeah, we should, because you get around people who just have the mindset of paycheck to paycheck. And then that's what you end up doing. So you got to surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah. The other thing, guys, too, that I think really sets us apart is that, when you go from this podcast over into, say, like a budgeting course that we have, or even Roots, like I am fully there. That's the other thing people don't get. And in fact, people will be shocked, like when they buy a planner from me, or they join Roots, or we show up to live meetups, or they're like, oh my gosh, Brad is like actually here. Like he's involved. He answers questions. He's in the Facebook group. He shows up every Tuesday night. We get him personally. And I think and that's just not Roots, but like any of these other programs that you might invest in. I mean, there is tremendous value there. Like when you're looking at some of these giant personal finance experts, you're buying a recycled course, and good luck, you're on your own. That's basically what it is. I didn't want that here. I think that's what most people are missing. I don't have dreams of having tens of thousands of Roots members. That's not our goal. Our goal is to keep this very intimate, very personal. In fact, a lot of the Roots members that I have now become my friends. You look at Amber. I mean, my friend also works here. It was so many people that I have actually had personal friendships grow from this that have been members. Like, those are the things that differentiate us between some of these bigger places. Again, it's not necessarily the information that's taught, because a lot of that is going to be very same, because the principles are the principles. It's just the overall experience that you're going to have in investing with a smaller company like what we're doing. And again, you got to connect. I think you've got to be able to make that connection with the person that you're learning from in order to keep you motivated and keep you accountable and to keep you moving forward.
Hey, what's this I see? I thought this was a party! Let's
All right. That sound means it's time for the celebrations of the show. And today we are kicking it off with Jill Brown. Jill said, got to work from home all week, but then I got flat tires last night coming home from the store. Oh, that sucks. But she says she had enough money in savings to get new tires with cash. So some silver lining there. Not going into debt. Way to be prepared, Jill. Good win.
Tammy Garcia, getting things in line to begin taking clients from my virtual freelancing bookkeeping business. Goal is to work less hours, make more money to get that debt paid down.
Love that. Way to go, Tammy.
And Rudzitis, got my January budget done and figured out a plan for short income while my husband is recovering from surgery right now.
Awesome. Way to go, Ann. Congratulations to you. Shanna Skinner, paid cash for my truck repair. Also finished my budget for next month. And it's already done. Fantastic. Way to go, Shanna.
Sarah Boyson did some day help on a ranch in my free time this week and made some extra cash to pay towards debt.
Awesome. Great win, Sarah.
And Terry Klusner paid off my car loan 5.5 months early. This is the first time in our 27 years of marriage that we haven't had a car loan.
How good does that feel for them, I bet? I remember
Awesome.
I remember we paid off our car for the first time. In fact, it was the 1996 Toyota Corolla. That was my first paid for car. Outside of the gray 1988 minivan mom and dad gave me when I was in high school, right? That one they just gave me because it wasn't worth much. But yeah, my first car, I was in my early 30s. It was the first paid for car I had was a 1996 Toyota Corolla. I got to tell you, that thing was amazing to drive knowing that was paid for. So Terry, great win. I'm sure that feels fantastic. And again, remember guys, to get all the resources and show notes and links for today's show, head over to balancedcents.com. That's BALANCEDCENTS.com /110. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us here today. We love your feedback, and it also helps us grow our YouTube show. So please give us a like or leave us some honest feedback on this video. And if you want the latest from the show, obviously be sure to hit that notification bell and subscribe to our channel. And for the latest resources, or if you want more information on how to kick debt and financial stress, please be sure to check out the links in this video or head over to therealdebtfreedad.com. We'll see you guys on an upcoming show. Take care.